Wallabies and Lions, test number 2, folks. We have a Welshman. Jack Morgan is on the bench for this one, and we've got a 6-2 split for the Wallabies. They are bringing some punch up front with the return of Rob Valentini and Will Skelton to the Wallabies 23 and to actually the starting 15. We'll go through the squads which have been announced, some predictions, stats, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. First test was 27-19. Bit of a game of two halves. I certainly think both sides have drawn some pretty clear conclusions from that one. Andy Farrell is looking for a much more kind of 80-minute performance. I don't think they were at all happy with the performance levels in the second half. And the Wallabies, I think, have concluded they need to bring the beef because they've gone with the 6-2 split. They've probably looked at the lack of gain line success they had last week and have decided that the solution to that is more and bigger forwards. Last week we saw Matt Fassler start at hooker for the Wallabies, which was a interesting call because he was a bit short of rugby, but he is out of the 23 this week with the return of Dave Parecki, who was unavailable for last week. The Wallabies line out, I think, was 80% last week. They would obviously like that to be higher. You want to be in the 90s, closer to the 100, so we'll see how he goes throwing those darts in. They will be happy with the scrum, though. Latoa and James Slipper continue on. They were able to win a fair few penalties at scrum time, so they'll be looking for more of the same, but obviously it's a different referee this week, so that can be a bit of a lottery. Nick Frost continues on. He's kind of their main line-out jumper, and he's going to be needed at line-out time because Will Skelton there at 5 certainly brings the beef, but he's not really the biggest line-out option in terms of it's hard to lift the guy because he's massive. And Valentini is likewise not a kind of renowned line-out operator, but he is there to carry the ball over the advantage line. He is a massively high work rate player. That is the 100% reason that the Wallabies have started him. He starts virtually every game he's available. He's a key player for the Wallabies, and they're going to need a lot from him. But not at line-out time. Nick Frost, as I said, is going to have to shoulder a bit more of that burden. Fraser McCright was cracking on defence last week. He was the Wallabies, I think, second top tackler behind Nick Champion de Crespigny, who was on debut, who was their top tackler, who was out of the 23, but is a different player and performing a different role from what we see from Valentini here. So maybe a bit more pressure on McCright to continue to be defensively solid. How many tackles did he make last week? 16. Pretty high, and 1-3 turnovers, so they'll need more of the same from him. Harry Wilson continues on at number 8. I kind of don't make many predictions, but I assumed that Joe would keep faith with the 9-10 combo, and it's happened. Joe is not a guy to chop and change, particularly his number 10. He showed a lot of faith through Noah Lolesio. That guy's injury in the Fiji game right before the tour itself started in the test matches was very unfortunate timing. It meant Tom Liner was in the deep end last week, and he mainly played the half where the Wallabies were on the back foot. It would have been interesting to see how much impact he would have been had if he played the full 80 in the second half, but obviously they needed to give Donaldson a go. But there's no changing. They've kept faith in the young man, so we'll see how he is able to go, especially if with this bolstered forward pack they're able to get a bit more go-forward ball in the ball carry. Lene Kitau and Joseph Suali'i. No changes in the midfield. Jorgensen, Harry Potter, and Tom Wright, the same back three. So it's kind of minimal changes, basically just the bolstering of the pack. Pollard, Bell, and Robertson, these are your same front row replacements as last week. Bell was certainly another one busy on the carry. Williams drops to the bench. He's certainly another line-out option if they decide to bring him on. Gleeson and Tadano, a couple of loose forward replacements. And then Tate McDermott and Ben Donaldson are the two back replacements with that 6-2 split. They were quite direct last week, the Wallabies. Like your top carriers were Frost, the big lock, McCright, your loose forward. Obviously, I think that'll be Valentini this week. They'll be looking to see him on the ball carry a bit more. Then Ikitau and Suali'i. Might be nice to see if they can get a bit of go forward ball up the guts, if they can stretch the Lions' defensive line to then be able to get guys like Potter right and Jorgensen into some space, because when you did see the limited time they got the ball in hand, the Wallabies outside backs still looked pretty dangerous. For the Lions, they seem to have made a few kind of injury-enforced changes, unfortunately. Seems like Gary Ringrose was initially down to start alongside Bandiaki in the midfield. It kind of makes sense that they keep them as units. They got the Huipolotu unit and then the Aki Ringrose kind of Irish unit, but with Huipolotu Well, Tuipulotu Sione being unavailable with a hamstring injury. Bundyaki gets promoted to the bench, and Ringrose was apparently initially named, but reported to the coaching staff that he had, I guess, concussion symptoms, so they've automatically pulled him from the game. He could have, as Andy Farrell said in the press conference, he could have kept that hidden from everybody, but he brought it forward, so it means it is the kind of Aki and Jones combo, which is a kind of less familiar one than keeping the duos together. But you certainly got to give credit to Gary Ringrose, man. You don't get many opportunities to play in a Lions test match, but he essentially ruled himself out. So that guy needs all the kudos in the world. Front row wise, Porter is promoted to start at loose head. So Genji drops to the bench, Sheehan and Furlong. So it's an all Irish front row, and I do like keeping the units together. I do think there's cohesion there that you can't get in whatever prep time the Lions have got. And then Itoje and Chisholm is an all-English second row. McCarthy is another one of the guys who was unavailable due to injury, so that's kind of an injury-enforced change, but I don't mind it. Just keeping those kind of guys together. Byrne, who was man of the match last week, is still at number 6. Tom Curry, who really justified his selection last week, is at 7. And Jack Conan is at 8. I mean, these guys were pretty busy. Byrne, 23 tackles and 3 turnovers one last week. Plus, I think he was their second line-out option, apart from Itoje. Cracking effort from him. Itoje was one of the top tacklers with 19. Curry had 3 dominant tackles, so these guys were absolutely putting in a defensive masterclass. At times, keeping the Wallabies, who are, when they get going, a really attacking-minded side, kept it looking pretty quiet at times. Gibson, Park, and Finn Russell continue on 9-10. There's no real surprises there. The midfield we've already talked about. James Lowe, you feel like could use a better game than last week. Kicking was a little bit erratic at times. Tommy Freeman also dropped a few more balls than he would have liked. And Hugo Keenan is there at 15. So the back three could probably go up a gear, you feel like, compared to some of the other areas of the Lions squad. Kelleher, Genge, and Stewart, those are your front row replacements. So a couple of the English props there. Genji, you feel like, does suit the bench role with the kind of physical impact he can make. James Ryan into the squad at 23 with no McCarthy available. He's another big chunky lock to bring off. And then Jack Morgan, we've got a Welshman. Kudos to that guy for just putting in the hard yards week in, week out. He gets himself, if he comes off the bench, a test cap to his name, and then any travelling Lions fans will, from Wales, will have a bit of extra reason to cheer for the side. Mitchell, Farrell, and Kinghorn in a changed set of backs. So Owen Farrell, who wasn't even initially in the squad, he gets a test cap in this one. But remember, there are a fair few injuries. Mac Hansen still not fit. I mentioned Ringrose ruling himself out. I mentioned Sione Tuipulotu's hamstring injury. So I don't know if many of those guys are fit that Owen Farrell gets a game, but he is there on the bench. Certainly a veteran campaigner to bring off. And then Blair Kinghorn adds to the Scottish impact on the bench as well. So yeah, a few more changes you feel like in the Lions squad than the Wallabies, but I don't know that they would have made them if not for all the injuries that they suffered. Now, areas of focus, if we look at some of the stats, the Lions, I've put scrum focus on the board because, I mean, they conceded 11 penalties last week. 6 of them were to their props. That certainly needs to improve, but again, different ref sometimes sees a different picture. In comparison, the Wallabies props didn't concede any penalties. That doesn't happen very often. Territory and possession, first half was all the Lions. Second half was all the Wallabies last week. That's one of the areas I feel like the Lions won't be that happy with because they wanted to wrestle control, away and just, put the Wallabies to the sword. It didn't quite happen. They still kept them at arm's length, but they did more with the ball. That's an area of focus you feel like for the Wallabies. I talked about gain line. Like if you're looking at the amount of meters they had and the amount of carries it took them, the Wallabies are at 2.1 meters a carry. Like 4 is the gold standard. So they are half of the gold standard. What is that? The silver standard? It ain't good. The Lions were like 3.9, so very, very close to that gold standard of 4 meters per carry. And their tackle rate was 91%, which is class. The Wallabies were in the 80s. So the Lions defense needs a lot of credit for keeping the Wallabies attack looking a bit lethargic. But as I said, they've brought the forward punch, so we'll see if it can make any difference. It is not predicted to. Bookies have got the Lions by 10 points. Rugby Forecast algorithm has got the Lions by 11 points. It is on at the MCG. which is a behemoth of a stadium, usually an Aussie rules ground, seats a lot of people. I'm not sure if they'll sell the thing out, but it should be a roaring atmosphere at the MCG just with the pure number of people there. It is a chance for the Lions to secure the series. I would love to see the Wallabies get it done just to give us that third and final decider rather than the third game where everyone just changes the lineup because the series is already done and dusted. Andrea Piatti, the Italian, is the ref. He's had a few moments in the spotlight during the URC season for interesting calls. Fingers crossed it is not him we are talking about at the end of this one. 8 p.m. local kickoff time over in Australia. 10 p.m. for those of us in New Zealand. I think it's like, what, 11 for you guys in the UK and Ireland. So hopefully a pretty good time for most. If you want British and Irish Lions gear like that jersey, which I am a fan of, check the link down in the description. Get yourself the jersey before the tour is done and dusted. Wallabies gear, also check the Wallabies store down in the description. Those stores are both affiliates of this channel. Using those links tells them 2 Cents Rugby is the one that sent you. But yeah, get yourself some gear. Let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. Is Joe Schmidt making the right call by bolstering with some big bodies? Or do you think the Lions, with their experience and just how, like, kind of not in top gear they looked last week and still managed to win 27-19? Do you think that's just going to be too much of a gulf in class? You guys take care. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I would greatly appreciate it. And yes, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.